This is Rudy with the Talking Pools podcast, and we are here on Tuesdays with Dan. Dan is busy up to his ears in assholes and alligators, doing his best to juggle it all, and I'm sure he's doing a fantastic job, but we've been promising that it would be Tuesdays with Dan and Lacey. So today is the day where you guys really get to meet Lacey. And I got to tell you, I've been trying to learn a little bit about the way they do business out west. So I've been trying to learn a little bit about how they do business in the pool with swimming pool maintenance and stuff like that out there. But I couldn't really find a good reference for pools. So I've been rewatching Yellowstone. I think that's how it goes.
Pretty much, yeah.
So
it's still the Wild West for sure. We don't really pay probably as much attention to the numbers as we should. We like to play it by feel a little bit. So one of the things that we've noticed as being a really good thing is we have a store, we have retail, service, and construction. And in our retail store, we usually have about 25 spas on the floor. We recently added massage chairs, and it's a really great conversation starter for our customers walking in and seeing our employees sitting in a massage chair. They give them shit, it breaks the ice, and it's not that kind of, I'm coming into your store and I know you're going to try to sell me something relationship that sometimes you get. So we still like to play it by feel. We still feel like we're a really small family-owned and operated business, and it helps to break the ice and introduce people to that concept with those massage chairs.
Join the Council for the Model Aquatic Health Code, aka CMAC. CMAC is a member-driven organization that keeps the Model Aquatic Health Code sustainable, current, and complete. Your expertise is needed. Learn more at cmac.org. That's cmahc.org.
I think having an icebreaker is really important, and it some people aren't comfortable doing it, but when your sales guy is sitting in there and gets some feedback from the customers, it opens up an initial route to the conversation for sales there.
sounds like a great way to get a foot in the door.
And I think most of us are overrun with people moving into smaller areas, right? They're getting out of the expensive big cities. A lot of us are in smaller suburbs or smaller cities, and we're getting a lot of people that are moving into our areas. So we are getting a lot of newer customers, and I feel like that's something across the board, especially in the smaller areas and suburbs. And, Florida, you guys are getting all kinds of people from New York and Washington and California and Oregon, right?
It's so funny. Years and years ago on Saturday Night Live, Chris Farley used to do this thing where he was a motivational speaker, and he lived down in the van down by the river. That was the big thing, and it was just supposed to show how down and out he was, that he had to live in a van down by the river. So I actually mentioned something along the lines of that a couple of weeks ago, talking with Andrea in the show. She's like, why would you say it that way? That's what people aspire to do nowadays. Everybody wants to get rid of everything, minimize, and live in a van down by the river.
And that's maybe part of the employee disconnect too, right? Those of us that are in the generation of you work your butt off and that's what you do, you prep for the next stage, are kind of at war with this next generation coming in who their life aspiration, like my 17-year-old son, is to move to Hawaii, buy a one-way ticket, and live on the beach and play guitar. He doesn't care where his next meal is going to come from. And some of that's that he's 17, right? But some of that is just that generation. That's kind of like the aspiration, is to be happy, which is fantastic. I still like the work hard, play hard concept. I hope that perseveres a little bit, because if we don't have the hard workers, you're not going to get to play hard. Understanding what everybody else's jobs are is really important. You shouldn't get your accountant to come in and just do accounting. I think that they should spend some time in the field too. They should spend some time on every crew. They might find something that they do love and don't love.
You're going to get beat up on for saying that. That's not my job. It's going to come back. You're going to blow up my email.
Let's throw mine on there. I'm totally good at that. I think if nothing else, it's a valuable experience for that person who says it's not my job. That's fantastic. It might not be your job, but you should understand how your job affects every other job in your work group, right? And if without that understanding, it's kind of like the day shift, night shift. We've both done restaurant work, and there's always that delineation between day shift and night shift. There's always going to be a delineation between groups. Oh, it's the construction crew that does that. Oh, it's the service guys that do that. We all know the builders and the service guys and the retail guys all have a beef with one another. And it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. We can all learn something from the other one on how to make everyone's life easier. Whether we make those changes or not are up to each of the individual businesses. But if you've got a pool builder who works well with the landscaper and who works well with the retail store that his customer is going to go to when he's done with them, and the service guy who's done with it, then there's a mutual respect in that pool. That whole pool is going to be built better at the end of the day because everybody's got their hands on how to make it function best.
I
think there
agree
needs
with
to
that,
be
but you left somebody
better
out.
communication.
So service people can get pissed that the builder builds a pool that is not impossible, but extremely difficult to service. That builder may be sitting there with the customer saying, no, you can't do that. I don't care. This is what I want done. At what point do you say no? I mean,
the builder should be responsible for saying, listen, these are things that are going to make it much more difficult for your service guy. It's probably going to cost you more. You're probably going to have a difficult time finding one. Fine. I understand that. I'm okay with it. Right. I think that's where that comes along. As long as the builder doesn't say, hey, this is the most beautiful thing ever. It's going to be easy to take care of, maintenance free. And then the service guy comes in and says, well, your builder sold you a crock of shit. It's not maintenance free. There's no such thing as maintenance free. Somebody's got to do it. It's either you or me. And then the retail store is coming in and saying something different. And some of that is a matter of opinion, but there's also got to be some continuity in there.
It gets to a point where, sometimes there's not enough money. And I know that sounds like a hard thing to believe, but sometimes there isn't enough. Sometimes something's just going to be problematic. It's going to be that way, and you're just going to have to hear about it. It's not worth hearing about it. It does get a little tricky sometimes.
So do you think that disconnect on not enough is because there are certain areas where the service pros get the opportunity to go in and do a job in 15 minutes and move on to the next one, and these larger, more in-depth projects are more of a service call than a service visit, and that's where it's not worth it? Is because there's easier money on the 15-minute visit?
Well, everybody likes to pick the low-hanging fruit, right? But I am not a big fan of the 15-minute visit either.
Is that a service person's problem, or is that the failure of the builder to communicate that doing it this way is going to cause this problem?
I think the builder has to educate the customer, but then we also have to realize that homes get sold.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
Houses sell. And then is it the builder's responsibility to come back on and then educate that customer, that homeowner? No.
Nope.
So it has to be everybody. And he comes out and does it every day. There's times, I guess, that we all should say no. Then there's the whole problem with money. How much money will it get you to say yes? So realistically, it sounds like this is a bunch of prostitutes. So
every industry is.
Not all of us. Not all of us.
Well, there's a line for everybody, right?
There you go. So it's everybody's job to educate. It has to be. It has to be all of ours. And I do agree with you with the people, not only builders and service people having had experience in other jobs, but your office personnel spending a day or two out in the field to get a better idea of what that person is going through.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be permanent, but just a little bit of a taste of what everybody else in your work environment is dealing with. And a lot of times the outside guys are frustrated at the inside guys because their job is so easy and it's air conditioned. Well, you put one of those service guys on a phone every 5 seconds from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. or 6 p.m., they're not going to be happy. They'd much rather be outside playing in the sun in pools.
So how do you bridge that gap with your new hires?
I think with new hires, it's easier because they don't come in with a preset expectation, and you don't necessarily know where they're going to fit until they fit. You get a new hire and he might rotate through service. Usually we start him in service because it's the easiest thing to go in and follow somebody around, learn how to use a vacuum, learn how to clean filters, and they're an extra body. And the service guys can always use an extra body. And then once they're there, honestly, they either stay there or they move into the store and start learning how to answer the phone or test water in the store. They'll do water testing out in the field. So that kind of translates over between the two. That bridges a little bit of a gap. Construction doesn't usually intermingle with the other two very much. Sometimes we'll get a construction guy and, after a couple days, you can tell he's much more suited to following the service guys around and learning a service thing rather than being involved on the dirt side of it. I think the construction guys are a little bit harder to pick, honestly, because it's not nearly as fun of a job as the others can be. You're in the dirt and the hot, and you don't get to jump into the pools because they're not done yet. They're not full of water. So they kind of get the worst of all worlds. I would say that the benefit of it is, at least here, we can usually dig year-round. So the construction guys are more likely to have consistent labor that we don't have to try to find something to do with them in the winter. So if you get a guy that can bridge the gap between retail and construction, they become a little bit more valuable if they can sell spas in the winter and play with dirt in the summer. We do 2-man crews for almost everything. We don't have a ton of weekly maintenance accounts, and those are 1-man crews, but we have a couple of guys that prefer to be on their own. And those are the ones that will do the weekly maintenances, but contact does kind of isolate you from the rest of the team.
What do you do to go ahead?
Oh, I was just going to say, another thing that we have found to be really useful is connecting with other people from across the United States. We have a monthly call of owners for the spa companies, and then we also have talked about throwing in some of the sales guys on their own monthly call, because there's a lot of value in them connecting with people from across the United States that do a similar thing and maybe picking up different ways that they're doing it, and not just hearing it from the owners or the managers all the time. A lot of times the owners and managers are the ones that get to go on trips and meet people, and the employees don't unless you're sending them off to training. So that's another really great thing, I think, is to be able to get them into a group of industry peers. There's a lot of Facebook groups that are like that too, and it's really fascinating to see the questions and comments. And this industry is a brutal industry, but if you get into a good group, we'll share information kindly, that changes the dynamic of it. But even getting them to meet other people at the national shows or the more localized shows, I think, can be really important. Well, it's exciting for them, and it gives them something to strive for, and they come back and they want to do things differently maybe, or make positive changes. And I don't think it does anything except benefit your business when you get those guys out there that hear different ways of doing things or bring different ideas. And sometimes they don't, sometimes it doesn't work, but it's always great that they're becoming involved in making things better in the industry.
I agree. Get our feet wet with Lacey on Tuesdays with Lacey. Hopefully, again, like I promised, one day soon it will be Tuesdays with Dan and Lacey. Right now, you get the Tuesdays with Lacey's hat. No, one day. So, but until then, hey, if you like the episode, like us, share us, recommend us to a friend. And until next time, be good, be safe.
See you next week.